Good morning to you. Mark Sudduth, Hurricane Track here. It's Sunday now, July the 7th, 2024. Beryl closing in on the Texas coastline. I'm down here in Bay City getting ready to head out in just a little bit after I produce this video. With my colleague Matt from Colorado, we're going to set out 5 camera systems, a couple of pressure sensors with those systems, those cameras, to capture pressure data, hopefully in the eye and then just outside of the eye, so we can document what's called the pressure gradient, the difference in pressure over distance. And then, of course, bring you live imagery of what happens along the coast and even inland. I'll talk about that as we wrap everything up today, our plan of operations, so to speak. But first, we need to talk about the impacts, what to expect, what's happening with the structure of Beryl. The good news, the dry air has been the one big hurdle lately since leaving the Yucatan that Beryl has not been able to clear to any great extent anyway, and that is limiting the development, which is great news, obviously, for residents here in Texas. But that being said, it is not nothing, as they say. I know that's a double negative. This will still have significant impacts, and I think we're going to get that surge along the coast. That's inevitable. And then the rain impacts, especially for the greater Houston area, we don't know how that's going to play out, but it could be substantial enough in a fairly short window that people will say, oh man, Beryl, that was something else. Not going to rank up there in the top 5 or anything. Got to put it in its place, but Beryl will have impacts, and I'll try to explain that, at least from my perspective, what I'm seeing, the best I can. Thanks for tuning in. Let's get started. First, on our interactive tracking map, off the Hurricane Track Insider site. This is connected through our Patreon, so if you're on our Patreon, $10 tier and up, you get access to this map and all of our other amazing features. By the way, you have the option to turn on the different layers. These are our permanent cameras, and then we will have our deployed cameras, 5 of them showing up here as Matt and I work to set that up throughout the rest of the day. So looking at the map, I want to point out a couple of things that are really important. Yes, it's closing in on Texas, but look at this. When it's all said and done, Beryl, the remnants of it, will be all these other areas, storm, impact event, whatever you want to call it, 2, even up into Michigan. This big trough that's coming in to catch it is going to pull all that energy up from the Gulf. I mean, this thing traveled from the intertropical convergence zone, partially from a tropical wave, I do believe, many, many days ago. What a journey it has had, a legacy certainly of death, unfortunately, and destruction. I am certain the weather community, the World Meteorological Organization, and the National Hurricane Center will vote to retire the name. I have nothing to do with that, but that's just my opinion. I think this does get retired. But Beryl is going to impact a lot of real estate, not just Texas, and we need to keep that in mind. So speaking of all that, the latest stats, by the way, 60 miles per hour, still a tropical storm. The pressure is dropping, and as I will show you on the satellite imagery in just a minute, it is starting to get better organized, and I think it's going to ramp up quickly right before landfall. But a few things to continue to point out. The peak surge, I want to make sure people are still on top of this. It's, just a tropical storm, but that can just bring quite a bit of water rise. And if this comes in at low tide, which happens overnight tonight, in the wee hours of tomorrow morning, then these numbers would be just a little bit lower. But we don't have a super duper high tide range along this portion of the Gulf Coast. It's like less than 2 feet. And so, some of these tides, total storm surge values, when it's all said and done, might be more like 3 to 5 feet if it comes in near low tide. Nevertheless, that's water above ground level. And you just never know where a maximum may occur, a peak tide that, wasn't expected, so to speak, depending on how heavy one of those bands is driving the wind on shore. So that's why we have this big range up here from the Texas and Mexico border down here, all the way up to Cameron, Louisiana. Pretty significant event affecting a lot of coastline, and people that live down here and have any experience with hurricanes, they know what to do. But, it is a storm surge that's coming, so be prepared for that. We will have several cameras covering that storm surge, and then we're going to have one up here in the Houston area, over near Katy actually, to capture these impacts. And I'll talk more about that as we move forward. The rainfall potential, this is ever evolving as the overall guidance with where Beryl will be, what the forward speed will be, and all that. So this is going to be changeable. But the latest info, I got it wrong yesterday morning just by one element of the scale over here, so I'm going to make sure I get the legend correct. The yellow is 4 to 6 inches, and that encompasses a large area here going all the way up into, from South Texas, East Texas, up into, Arkansas and beyond. Some of those yellows up there. This, what do you call that, gold color, I guess? That is 6 to 8 inches, and yes, that does encompass the greater Houston area, but not too far south from there. Yes, that's orange. My eyes do not deceive me. And that is the area right here, and that is up to a foot. So, this is not precise. And I mean, folks, even 6 to 8 inches in and around Houston, 4 to 6 in a short amount of time can be problematic. So if you're new to the Houston area post-Harvey, post-Imelda, which was 2 years later, 2019, not many people remember that one, this is not going to be anywhere near those, but the flood control system can get overwhelmed when you have a lot of rain in a short amount of time. So be smart, use common sense. If your instincts say, I shouldn't cross that, listen to those instincts, because you don't want to, as they say, find out. We want to keep everybody safe and you not have to find out. We don't like that. All right? So satellite imagery, this is what we call the true color. Sun just now coming up across the Gulf of Mexico and beyond. Beryl starting to look more organized. A very solid band up here, wrapping in, trying to weed out that dry air. But the dry air is coming in through here. You can clearly see it is trying to get to that center. Maybe it gets choked off the dry air. Maybe it gets mixed out, as we say. We're not sure. We don't know for sure. We have computer guidance that helps to at least pave the way a little bit of that knowledge, like what could potentially happen. But we don't know for sure, and this is the satellite imagery updating. But it is getting better organized, and we can see that. I did a little screenshot of radar scope for you here off my iPhone just a few minutes ago, and you can see it is starting to curl in there, trying to develop, I won't call it an eye wall, but it is trying to wrap that deep convection around the low pressure center, which is somewhere in here. And once it can do that, if we can see a more organized core develop, it still has plenty of time, even 12 hours. I want to come on here. When you see me, that means I'm talking to you and not at you. I want people to understand that even 12 hours is plenty of time for a hurricane, a tropical storm first to become a hurricane, or even a Category 1 hurricane to reach in just incredible intensity. We saw that last year, and this is just a reminder. It's not a direct comparison. On Twitter, it's just been a nightmare trying to get people to understand that Harvey and Beryl were both tropical storms 48 hours before landfall, and look what happened. Harvey rapidly intensified. That was not to say that Beryl could do so. It's just a reminder that these systems can rapidly intensify. And for the wind impacts, not so much the surge. You kind of need that wind to be there more than just a few hours. It can certainly elevate the surge real close to the coastline, but they're more efficient when that well-developed core is there pushing the water ahead for a day or more. These short terms, that's why, by the way, Otis did not have in Mexico a very high storm surge, because it rapidly intensified so fast, it didn't have time to sort of bulldoze that water in. But the rapid intensification, and here is the main point, it's not that we expect it, that it could rapidly intensify up to something like Harvey, which was a Category 4. It is the point of rapid intensification makes the effects much more pronounced. I've been in them in different stages, a 1 going to a 2, a 1 going to a 4, or whatever, over my 30 years of doing this. I know what happens. And the wind really becomes much more problematic when these things are rapidly intensifying. So the reason that is dangerous is people look at this, they see tropical storm or they see Category 1, and they think, I can drive around in that. I can go to my job site. I can go to see my buddy or travel through the area because I need to leave town or whatever the case may be. And then this thing rapidly intensifies, going from a lower wind speed to a higher wind speed. And there's different definitions of it, different rates. But when they are quickly organizing, that wind becomes much more problematic. You get much more of these downbursts, and that can bring down trees and power lines much more efficiently than a system that is weakening, especially, that makes sense, or even in steady state, unless they are already intense. So the rapid intensification part is not that we're expecting it to get up to some benchmark level like Harvey. It's just that they are both positioned in the Gulf that 48 hours before landfall they looked innocuous, and then they weren't once we saw reality. That was the comparison. You might have seen my post about that. Got a lot of blowback about it, but sometimes you have to explain things to people. But in terms of the flood threat, no, this won't be a Harvey, but it will have its own impacts. We've got to stop comparing, well, it won't be a Harvey, and using it as an excuse to not take it seriously. This is Beryl. Look at what Beryl has already done, and think about what it might do in our area. Over here, I say our area because I'm here now, and so we have to think of it in those terms. Look at the here and now. All right, so the HWRF model, which has done fairly well overall, all the models have struggled this last phase here with how much dry air would be in there, but let's just look at the latest. This is from the 6Z run this morning, so it's the overnight hours, early morning hour run. 6Z is basically 2 a.m. Eastern time or 6 Zulu time, and so it shows that Beryl does get better organized all the way up to landfall. And that is what is so important here. So this is the overnight hours tonight, very early tomorrow morning. So we're going to drop almost 20 millibars, according to the HWRF, from where we are now, somewhere around here. We're about closest to this right here. We're closest to 15Z. So it's saying it should be about 990. And then we go up here and we lose about 20 millibars because it's sub 970. It's like a 969 right into Matagorda Bay. And this is what I'm talking about. See that band right in here? Let me use black to make this really jump out. That's a very well-developed core on the east side. There's another strong band that comes up. And then where's Houston? Houston's sitting right up in here. And then you have Galveston sitting down here and all the areas that lead down towards that. Sorry, that's Bolivar. Galveston's over here. I know you're already yelling at your screen. I know my Texas geography really well. I'm just talking too fast. But yes, we could have some big problems down near the coast, up the I-45 corridor. And then look, that band comes right over the greater Houston area. This is aiming into areas like Jamaica Beach, Galveston proper, Surfside Beach, Sargent farther to the south, onshore flow, always coming on. You're going to get a lot of water piled up here. A big problem with Beryl. It is not, like I said, nothing. All right? Please keep that in mind. So why is it doing what it's doing? I think this is kind of neat. I wanted to show you this. Here is our remnant area of big old high pressure that has brought all the record heat. Raleigh the other day hit 104. This is another giant dome of high pressure over here. In the middle, we have this broad trough that's come in, splitting the ridges. It acts like a magnet, and it draws the storm and would-be hurricane out of the deep tropics down here into that weakness. It's pretty simple synoptic meteorology. There's your high. I'm going to simplify it for you. There's your other one. There's your trough in the middle. Beryl is drawn into that, and it'll again go up into parts of the Midwest and even the Great Lakes states over the next several days. And we'll need to monitor all of that potential for flooding and so forth. So, by the way, speaking of the later part of this track, tomorrow morning, if we have power here at the hotel, hopefully, in Bay City where I am, I will be doing an update tomorrow morning. We'll be live in just a little while on YouTube, but I want to talk about the inland impacts as well, and so I want to make sure I try to get that done tomorrow, because post-landfall in Texas, this is going to be a big problem for a lot of people beyond Texas. I want to make sure that you are ready for that. So what are we going to do today? My colleague Matt and I are going to leave Bay City. We're going to head up to Surfside Beach. Then we're going to work our way down the coast, probably ending somewhere near Port Lavaca, maybe. We'll see as the track and everything evolves. And we're going to put these camera systems out, 4 of them, somewhere along that path. Definitely Surfside Beach, probably the Freeport area, somewhere near there, and then working our way down towards Matagorda Bay. Then, when we're all done, we're going to head up, a lot of driving today, to the Katy area, and we're going to put a camera over there along South Maid Creek, because I know that that area floods pretty efficiently, and it doesn't take a lot of rain, just a few inches in a short amount of time, to show the impacts of Beryl on Texas. But then we're going to just be live out in it. We'll be somewhere safe. We got a big Ford F-150 rental. We're not going to get near storm surge. This is the kind of hurricane that we can be in the eye for as long as we're out in the open, and we should be okay. If you know what you're doing, you can do something safely. Just because something is unsafe or dangerous doesn't mean that we have to behave in a dangerous manner. And we're not going to do that because I want that pressure reading right in the center of the eye, and I've got a great instrument from Kestrel to do just that. So we're going to be live on YouTube starting in just a couple of hours, all day long, and all the way through tomorrow. So be sure to tune in, subscribe to the channel. If you're not able to tune in immediately, hit the notification button so that you get a push notification or an email that Hurricane Track is live on YouTube. And you'll be able to follow along as long as we got a good signal out there using our nice Verizon LTE router. We'll be able to give you a literal first-hand view of what's happening as Beryl does what it does in Texas. All right? Thanks for watching. I do appreciate it. All of us, the team here, the community of Hurricane Track. Great family. We've been going strong since 1999. Through the age of social media here, we've come a long way. And we appreciate you tuning in and trusting me and my colleagues and all of us collectively to bring you what we hope is good, helpful information. All right? I am Mark Sudduth again for Hurricane Track. I'll see you next live from our trusty F-150 as we go out and intercept Beryl later today into early tomorrow.